we live, man?
We are live, buddy.
We're live. This is that pre-show. This is the TechWell system that I was talking about with that magwell on the AR9.
I love it.
Man, it's like a huge funnel. It's a big game changer when you're trying to do those TechWell or those reloads. So
I love it.
And hey, we'll I know we're live. I don't know if we have people on yet. We'll have people on here in just a second, I'm sure, but we'll share a discount code. I think for the first time ever, TechWell is offering a discount code. They did a discount code for our followers and viewers, right?
Wow.
That is so bright.
I love it.
I love that dot too. Hey, are we man, I see people on. So should we just do this?
We got 17 live, Mike.
Dang, 17 live. Good morning, folks. Looks like we got a bunch of people jumping on. Of course, we are live on the American Warrior Society page. We are live on the Shooting Performance page, and we are live on the IDPA page. So for you IDPA PCC shooters, you're going to love this live stream because we're talking all about pistol caliber carbine, and I'm going to give you some speed mount tips, how you truly mount the carbine, and I may say rifle, by the way, for speed. And by the way, if you're a rifle shooter, you're a three-gun shooter, you're a defensive rifle shooter, you're in the military, you're in law enforcement, everything I talk about today will apply equally as well for your rifle. So just because I say carbine or rifle or interchangeably back and forth, it doesn't really matter. Of course, I am joined by my partner in crime, co-host, Mr. Rich Brown. Hello. And behind the scenes, we have Miss Chris Sharon for us on the IDPA side. So thank you very much, Chris. I wanted to give you a thank you there. So Rich, should we just jump into it, man? We got 42 people on. Holy
Well,
crap.
yeah. But before we get going, I want to shout out to all the IDPA members out there watching this morning and all the countries you're going to be in this morning. Really appreciate you guys, as well as the American Warrior Society members and American Competitive Shooting Society members. Please tell me where you're from, where your coin number is. If you have any questions, please throw them up, and I'll ask Mike periodically as we get going today. Mike, that's all I got.
Yeah, folks, ask questions the entire time. I mean, oftentimes in past live streams, I would tell you to hold your questions until I was close to the camera. The beauty of going live like this is Rich can moderate the questions, and he'll feed those to me. And you can talk and ask about anything you want. Today I want to cover the basics of the PCC setup. I want to talk about the speed mount tips. I may talk a little bit about transferring shoulders, but beyond that, we can talk about pretty much anything that I have the ability to teach in this room. We do have a few sponsors and stuff like that this morning. I want to talk about them. But of course, before I start the actual show, I want to talk about safety first. Safety is always a key consideration. So if you're going to do this with me and you're going to dry fire and you're going to have a PCC or a rifle or whatever else, please do me a huge favor. Make sure you comply with all safety rules. All the 4 primary safety rules. All guns are always loaded. Never let your muzzle cover anything you're not willing to destroy. Watch your trigger finger. And, of course, backstop and beyond. In today's live stream, of course, because I'm in my home and you're probably in your home and you're dry firing, the dry fire safety rules apply as well. So you absolutely have to have a safe backstop when you're dry firing. Make sure you're not going to be pointing the gun. If it were live for whatever reason and you fired that round, it would go into your child's room or whatever else. Also, double check. Make sure right now. Go through your PCCs. Go through your rifles. Double check. You have no loaded magazines and nothing in the chamber. So I have 2 PCCs today. I'm going to show off my beautiful AR9Gs. I can actually look in my chamber. And by the way, when I'm clearing a rifle or PCC, I look in the chamber. I can't fit my pinky in there. A lot of times people will do a physical check, but I'm going to look inside the chamber. So that one is unloaded and clear. And of course, this beautiful blue beast.
Gorgeous.
Can someone take a screenshot of this?
Nice.
Okay, screenshot over. Anyways, this beautiful blue beast is unloaded and clear as well. I'm going to double check that. Unloaded is clear. So I've got a clear chamber. So do me a favor and unload and clear out your firearm. Also, if you're jumping on and joining us for this PCC live stream and rifle live stream, call it whatever you want to, please do me a favor right now. Take a second before I get into the technical details and click share. Go click share. Go to groups, go to whatever groups you're a member of. Some of you might be a member of 3-Gun Nation or 3-Gun Superheroes, whatever that is. Share it to those groups for me. So anyways, all safety rules must be applied at all times during the live stream. Of course, we have a couple other featured sponsors. The American Warrior Society is one in terms of this show, as well as the American Competitive Shooter Society. Those are my membership areas, and in those membership areas, if you are a member, you will find the PCC Mastery Program. So if you're watching this today and going, Mike, how do I get more of this? How do I learn more? Check out the PCC Mastery as an independent program. You can get it. It's on sale right now. Actually, if you go to my website, go to Compete. Under Compete, you'll see PCC Mastery, or you can consider the ACSS membership area, which is all of the programs. You could get the IDPA Mastery Program, you get the PCC Mastery Program, the USPSA Mastery Program, the stage breakdown section, the performance enhancement series, the slow-mo section, where I actually slow-mo my runs down and talk to you about what I'm doing. So anyways, consider those, please, at some point in time. If you want more, or a program you can literally follow along step by step. Of course, your coin members, or a bunch of coin members are on. As you know, you have access to all of the defensive rifle content, which the speed mount and reload tips and all the things we're talking about are in that area. A few more things, and I'll talk about my PCC setup here in a second, but TechWell is one of our sponsors today as well. So if you look at that magwell on my PCC, that is made by TechWell. So I'll kind of give the camera a quick flyby if you can look at that system. It's a very big and robust magwell system, and TechWell makes both the magwell you'll see on my 1911 systems as well as my PCCs. So if you're looking for a good magwell, and they make a TechWell pretty much for almost every variant out there. These two guns are beautiful Wilson Combat AR-9Gs, which means they run off the Glock magazine system. But if you're looking for a magwell, check out the TechWell, because it's pretty awesome. And write this down: Seek, S-E-E-K. Maybe someone post this in the comments if you would, pretty please. 15. Let me make sure that's right. Yeah, Seek 15. You get 15% off, which is fantastic. They don't ever give discounts, and you can get 15% off any TechWell product by using Seek 15. Okay. Of course, the Wilson Combat Recoil System is also one of the sponsors, and Wilson Combat is one of my primary sponsors. It's on the back of the gun here. We'll talk about that a little bit later on when we are talking about gun setup. So with no more delay, Mr. Rich, we're going to get into the technical stuff, but any questions so far, comments I need to be aware of?
We do, Mike. I want to say thanks to the 84 folks watching us live. We got people from Australia on, Delaware, Dallas, Long Island, man. Thank you to everyone on. Please like and hit that share button. A couple of quick questions come up, Mike, already. One is, where do you stand on suppressing a home defense gun? That's from John.
John always has a question, which what I love about John down in Dallas, Texas, I believe, area. So yes, and I'm not going to go too far down that road, but here's the deal. And the interesting thing is, it's a good question, because if you're talking about defending your home with a long gun, and understand, folks, the context of this live stream is going to be competitive PCC, but one of the choices I might make if I were going to use a long gun for home defense is a PCC. Now, I may not choose it over a rifle, but if for example, I have a suppressed AR. I have a couple suppressed ARs. If I'm going to use a rifle in home defense, then I absolutely positively am going to have a suppressor on it and make sure it's reliable suppress. Because, if you were to take that gun out and have, one of these muzzle brakes or fancy compensators and actually shoot inside your home, right, and maybe need the ability to communicate to your family members, I think you lose that the second you fire the first few shots. So if communication is the key and an issue, and you damage and blow out the hearing of your family members, that becomes a big issue in terms of the self-defense solution. So yes, John, I recommend a suppressed rifle if you're thinking about a rifle for home defense. The other option might be a PCC, because you can shoot a PCC in most cases, and they're so quiet. One of the problems we had with PCCs when the competitive division started was the timers weren't picking up the PCCs, because they're very, very quiet. So you could shoot a PCC in a home defense situation. Of course, it wouldn't probably be this length. I would opt maybe for a PCC pistol, right? But you could certainly shoot a PCC in home defense as well. Just make sure you find one that's ultra reliable. So good question. Mr. Rich, any other questions before I move on?
Yeah, one final, Mike, and I'm not sure that you can answer this one. This comes from Alistair down in Australia. He says, why do we have practical rifle, or in our case, IPSC rifle, yet we have PPC competing in pistol events? Should we also include shotgun in the same matches?
Well, they do. It's called 3-gun, Alistair. So in 3-gun, we do include shotgun, although I think your point is you've got these PCCs competing in divisions and on stages where the targets are 5 yards away and 7 yards away. So to me, it's not a great use of PCC, but the purpose of the whole PCC division is to allow folks to show up and shoot their PCC in these USPSA and IDPA matches. So I'm not going to judge the sports for doing that, because here's the deal. The short answer is, as a match course designer, I'm not going to hold them responsible to set up individual PCC stages or an individual PCC match. Although, if that were to happen, I think that would be the best way to do it. I think the national should be a standalone PCC national event, which USPSA, I think, did last year, whatever. I think that's intelligent to have a standalone PCC. As a matter of fact, I think USPSA is doing the PCC Carry Optics Nationals this year, which will be interesting because you have optics on both guns in theory, and then you could push the distance out a little bit farther. So I do think that it could be more standalone, but I also understand that the local club that is designing a stage is not going to go and design and set up 5 extra stages for PCC. So, all right, man, look, Tim Heron is on. Hey, good morning, Tim Heron. Tim Heron doesn't jump on very often. My little friend, Tim Heron, that needs to stop practicing so much. Looking too good on the Instagram. All right, Rich, what else? Anything else before we go into it?
Yeah, Chris says, Mike, what do you recommend on projectile grain for PCC with a comp 16-inch barrel?
Okay, so let me default from Chris. Let us talk about PC setup and what I do. Not saying it's the right answer solution all the time. By the way, I see so fast Jeff Adams. Good morning. See you there. I see him on Instagram all the time. Okay, so let me talk about my setup, and we'll talk about that as well. Full disclosure for those watching right now, of course, I'm sponsored by Wilson Combat, right? So when you look at these two PCCs, I got my beautiful blue one, my beautiful gunmetal grayish one. I wanted to kind of show those off. And when I'm showing these, I'm sponsored by Wilson Combat. I did bring two PCCs because these are set up differently in terms of the barrel and the shroud. So, for example, the gun in my left hand, you can see has an aluminum shroud. It actually has a 7 or 8 inch barrel, and then it has an aluminum shroud over that barrel. This has a full length, thin barrel. And the reason I have the two different guns I wanted to show you is this one is dramatically lighter or significantly lighter in the front end. This one is a little bit heavier, and I'm playing around with the difference in weight in terms of my ability to control recoil. So, for example, in a lighter gun, oftentimes the gun may move a little bit more than a heavier gun. But do I gain that speed back when I'm shooting because of my ability to move the gun fast and stop it fast, right? Because if you think about this, the lighter the front end of the gun is, the easier I'm going to be able to drive it and stop it on target. So in this case, this has an aluminum shroud over a barrel. Of course, it's a length that is the legal length for non-paperworked, PCC or rifle. So it's not a pistol, it's a rifle, which you have to be. I don't think you can shoot a PCC pistol in the USPSA or IDPA divisions. I'm not positive about that rule, but I believe that to be the case. So that's why you see that aluminum, that silver kind of barrel on the gun itself. Now, a couple things on the guns themselves. This one actually has a tech latch made by Techwell as well. They make the magwell and the latch. The other gun actually has the new Wilson Combat Ambi latch, which I really, really love this one. If you can see, this is a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more robust. You can see the 3 holes. Let me put this gun down. You can actually see the 3 holes in that charging handle. They make a full-size one, a long one, a medium one, and a short one. This, I believe, 3 holes is medium. I'm not positive about that, but the bigger it is, the more robust to hit with that hand very aggressively. And of course, both of these latches are ambi, so I can run them on both hands, right? Which is super important to me. So consider that on your PCC. Now, also on these guns, I'm running a Holosun 510C. This one is a GR, which means it's got a green reticle. This is a red reticle. To be very honest, I don't know if I found much of a difference in those two reticles. If you had to ask me for one and to get one, I'd probably go with the red. But I see them both pretty much equally. But if you notice, both the guns have the optic mounted pretty far forward on the frame itself. Versus here, like I know a lot of folks tend to like to mount their optic farther back. They get a bigger view through the window. For me, for target acquisition or transitions, I find that the optic a little farther out occludes my vision a little less, right? So I may have a little bit faster transitions. But here's the real truth on this optic position. The tip of the day for PCC is I mounted one PCC with an optic close. I mounted one PCC with an optic farther away, and the same thing would apply for a competitive rifle. And I trained back and forth, and I couldn't really tell much of a difference. So I defaulted to what I like the best, what got the optic up and out of the way, and that seems to be pretty good for me. Now, these both have collapsible stocks. Of course, these are the Wilson Combat collapsible stocks that I lock in and lock out. My tip where you on the stock is to extend your stock all the way out unless you have really, really short arms. I see a lot of folks get really, really compressed with their stocks, right? So they compress the stocks because they think they need to wrap the arms back here around the rifle or the PCC itself. Well, the reality is your arm is stronger the farther out it is away from the body. So I want the gun extended as much as possible so I can use that strength on that other arm to pull the gun into my body, okay? Now, all my PCCs have ambi safeties, right? So I have a safety on this side. Of course, I have a safety on this side, and I can run the safety with the thumb. I want to have an ambi safety because there may be a stage where we have to start out and do some things or whatever else, where we may have to start on the opposite shoulder, and I don't want to have to wipe the safety off with my finger, right? I don't like this method. I'm not saying it's bad, but I don't like that as well. Of course, these have the TechWell system. The TechWell magwell on the bottom of the gun facilitates a little bit faster loads. And then if you go up the gun, I've got 3 or 4 rubber handguards on this one, and I've got even more on this one. And then the differences, once again, are this is an aluminum shroud, okay? Now, someone asked about ammo, which is where I was going with this whole thing. Some of the ammo I get, most of the ammo I get is still from Wilson Combat. They send me a 135 grain truncated cone full metal jacket bullet. That's what they load. That's a bullet that Bill Wilson likes a lot. It's very, very accurate, and it's also very soft. But to be honest with you, I have not tested ammo across the board. I've not done, a comparison with, I probably would not default to a lighter bullet. Most of the divisions, both PCC as well as production divisions, find that a heavier bullet is a little softer shooting when you're trying to make minor, right? If you're shooting the minor versus a little bit lighter bullet. Okay, so that's how I actually have the gun set up. Both the guns have a pretty light recoil system in it, so you can't probably see it. So the recoil system is actually made by Wilson Combat. It was developed by a guy here locally. And then I turned the design onto Wilson Combat, and they're tweaking it. I don't know if it's for sale on the website, but it facilitates a 1911 style recoil spring. Okay, so just some quick things about the gun. We'll talk about the speed secrets of mounting it, and then transferring shoulders here in just a second. But Mr. Rich Brown, looks like we got a lot of folks on. 100. Hey, if we hit 150 people, 150 viewers, we're going to give something away.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Mike. We had 108 a moment ago, but I think you have a gift certificate or something for folks today.
No gift certificate, not from IDPA. But if we hit 150 live viewers, I'm going to look at all of the people that shared. So if you click the share button, we're going to take those people only, not the watchers, just the sharers. And we're going to give away a full precision holstered rig. So if I get 150 live viewers, that's all I have. That's 150. We're gonna randomly select a winner for some precision holsters gear. By the way, they make a pistol carbine PCC magazine holder, mag pouch. It's a little bit longer and supports the magazine just a little bit better. But they make the fast holster, which is the holster I compete with, which we're not talking about today because we're talking about PCCs and rifles. So, anywho, there we go, 150. So click the share button right now while I'm sipping my coffee because I'm going to stop talking. Tell every single human shares. I'm just kidding. I'm going to just have a sip of coffee. Mr. Rich, what else do we have in terms of questions I can answer before I go into the drop, dry, pull, press?
We got lots of questions, Mike. Let's start with this one from Alan. It says, I currently have a 9mm AR platform pistol, but I'm building a PCC 9mm with a 16-inch barrel. Would a SIG Romeo 5 with 3.0 MOA be an adequate optic?
Sure. I think it would be fine. I don't know if I'm not sure if the 3-minute optic is going to be a little bigger. So for example, with the Holosun reticle, like the reticle I have turned on, I'm not sure if we can get this sucker in front of the camera. Sometimes there it is. Ooh,
yeah, there we go.
It's right there. Okay.
Nice.
So you can see that reticle right there. I actually have the 3-dot system turned on. So that's the big outside circle and the inside circle. The small circle in the center, I think, is maybe a 1 or a 1.5 MOA. So if I have a stage I've got to be very precise on and take precise shots, I use that dot. But everything else, I use the big circle. So that big circle, basically at almost all distances, common distances on stages, centers right in the center of the A zone or the 0 zone on the IDPA target. And it's very, very fast because it's very bright and very robust. You know, I know a lot of folks that will turn the outer ring off. For me, there's no downside. It's not too busy. I hear that all the time. Well, it's just too busy for me. How's it too busy? It's a circle. Put it in the center of the target. If you need to use a little dot in the circle, center of the circle, then use the little dot. So I don't know if that current dot would be too big for you, but I would say, Alan, go with what you have and then adjust from there. If it doesn't work for you, you know, look at a Holosun or whatever else. By the way, I'm not sponsored by Holosun. I've probably sold 50 of these suckers to people over the years, and they probably should sponsor me. They'd give me a couple, but so if you know Holosun, hey, come on, man, send me a few more optics. I promote them all the time, but I'm not sponsored by them, so I'm not saying they're better. I think Geotech might make an optic that looks similar to this that has a slightly brighter dot. I think I watched a show with a video with Max Leograndis, who's a phenom, and he was showing the difference in the brightness of the optics. Okay, Mr. Rich, what else do we have, brother?
Brian says, sir, do you put slings on your PCC? If so, what type do you utilize?
No, I don't sling my PCCs. Not a reason to, because we don't transition to the sling. Don't use a sling in the USPSA or IDPA PCC divisions that I'm aware of. So there'd be no reason for me to have a sling in the way.
What about home use, Mike?
On my defensive rifles, I do have a sling, single point Magpul sling, and I'm not trying to sell people on a single point sling. For me, it's just much easier to transfer from shoulder to shoulder. And I don't do a lot of, slinging the rifle to my back and climbing up to the roof to get into a shooting position, which you might find, sorry about that, with law enforcement. But if I did, I would probably go with, probably, I'm not even sure which string, the one probably made by, who's my favorite 2-point sling? Who would be a good 2-point sling? I don't know. I use the Magpul, huh?
Vickers?
Yeah, Vickers has a good sling. There's what's the other one? Kyle Lamb makes a very, very good. The VTAC sling is probably the sling I see the most. Yep. And is very, very popular. So okay,
Mike, the next one comes from TC. He says, what kind of split time differences are you seeing between these two guns that you can attribute to the weight differences?
So good question. TC, none so far. So when I'm shooting the guns, even though this is a little lighter on the front end, the guns seem to recover about the same. Because this gun is lighter, though, I may start to tune it. And one of the things I'm playing with is with this recoil system, it runs on 1911 springs. And you can completely change how the gun runs based on the spring weight. It's really kind of strange. One of my sponsor shooters, Ian, local shooter, is a fantastic PCC shooter. Like he runs a PCC much faster than I do, and his split times are just almost unbelievable. And we played with super heavy springs on the heavy end and super light springs on the light end, and I don't have an answer yet. I tend to run a lighter spring. He tends to run a very light spring. I think it may be 11 pounds or whatever. If sometimes you can actually hear the bolt. Sometimes when I do a quick mount, the bolt actually moves because the spring's so light. But then again, some of the guys at Wilson Combat, Jared, we're running heavier springs. And I'm like, I don't think a heavy spring is the way to go. And I shot it. I'm like, well, that's not bad either. So TC, to answer your question, split times aren't much different. I can shoot both guns basically at my maximum trigger speed, and I haven't seen a difference in split times. But a little tip for you, if you're really working on trying to figure out what gun recovers faster or how to recover faster, which when we talk about the drop, dry, pull, press, set a target up at 40 yards plus. So I'm going to, instead of shooting at 20 yards, which I don't know any difference, I can literally shoot as fast as I can pull the trigger, still hit zeros or A's. So I'm going to put a target out there at 40 or 50 yards and do recoil control drills, and then I'll really be able to look at the splits. But I don't have a definitive answer yet. Maybe on the next show, I'm probably going to do a next show, PCC show next week. Maybe we'll talk about that, and I'll have more of an answer by then. Okay.
Thanks, Mike. Brian says, as far as magazines for that AR-9G, do you like Glock mags or any other type magazines?
Only Glock magazines for me. And the G is only Glock magazines. I did shoot and have AR-9B, which runs off the Beretta magazines. It was about the same. I have a bunch of high cap Glock magazines. They're incredibly reliable. I can use my short Glock magazines that I have for all my Glock 17s and my Glock 17s with the base pads. So for me, the Glock magazines are the most reliable. I just like them the best. They make most sense for me.
Tony says, have you trained with the LPVO in place of a red dot on a PCC?
No, and the reason for PCC, we don't really need that variable optic. I just don't see a good reason to have it. On 3-gun, based on the division you shoot, yes, that makes sense to me, but probably not on PCC. I mean, they're just not setting. We're not going to shoot a target past 75 yards, maybe 100 yards max in most stages, even at the national level. So for me, I don't need a variable power optic, and this big window is much faster at closer range or medium range targets. So not for me.
William wants to know, are you shooting 2-gun nationals?
Maybe. I don't know. You can't see it really well, but my calendar, my whole year calendar is behind me on the desk, and I'm still trying to move things around. I would love to shoot the Carry Optics PCC Nationals. I can't promise I'll be there because I have something that's before and after, but I would love to go play in that match. I'm not going to say I'd be super competitive with those 2 guns. They're not my forte, but if I can, I will. So,
Mike, final question, and this may be something you're going to talk about this morning, and that is, Chris wants to have your advice on managing tension in the fire control hand to limit trigger freeze.
Okay, so Chris, I'm not a big fan of going, okay, the tension is causing the problem in terms of trigger freeze. When you're pulling a trigger on the PCC or rifle, the trigger cycle is so short. The main problem is not releasing the trigger, right? So when I'm managing the trigger on the rifle, the PCC, I don't do it by really loosening this hand up. Although at the same time, I don't have a lot of tension in my shooting hand, right? Because even though I'm gripping the gun hard and high on the handguard itself, I don't need to have a lot of tension because I'm not controlling the PCC or rifle's recoil with this hand or my wrist anymore. I'm controlling it by positioning my hands and the stock in the right spot, in my cheek, in my elbow, and my shoulder, which we're going to talk about next, which automatically leaves my strong hand free to move the trigger pretty quickly. I think trigger freeze in most cases with a handgun is not caused by trigger hand tension. It's caused by a shooter's inability to release the trigger and never having learned to release the trigger when they fire the shot. Most folks that were pinners in the beginning, that pin the trigger, hold and try to just reset to the click, will have trigger freeze issues because you have tension in your trigger finger when you're pulling the trigger, and that applies to probably a PCC or rifle as well as a handgun. So you got to release that tension. When you fire that shot, if you think about it, the gun recoils like this. So when you fire a shot, if you reduce or release that tension in your trigger finger, it's pulling the gun away from your finger, the recoil itself. I mean, some of these top PCC shooters, they're almost bouncing the triggers. They've learned to bounce the gun and bounce the triggers, and that's why they're getting splits that are down in the probably 8 to 10 or 11 range, 0.808, which is, you can't pull the trigger that fast. I can't, at least, as fast as I'm going. So I don't worry too much about that. But that is a good segue. So let's talk about the position of the rifle or PCC itself. Let me talk to you about drop, drive, pull, press. Okay. So when I'm shooting a handgun, you would find that my feet are shoulder width apart. Okay. I would have my strong side foot slightly back, but my foot position is going to be depending on what I'm doing. So if I'm leaning around a barricade to the right with my handgun, I'm going to have the right foot forward. If I'm leaning to the left, I might have the left foot forward. But my feet are going to do whatever they need to do based on what I'm doing right then on the stage or what I'm about to do next. So if my PCC or rifle, I have the same foot position, okay? If I'm leaning around a wall or barricade to the right, that right foot will be forward, okay? If I'm standing flat-footed and shooting, my left foot is going to be slightly forward. So imagine my feet are in an athletic position, okay? Now, in terms of your hand on the handguard, none of this compressed stuff where you're coming back to the mag well, because you automatically lose strength in the front of the gun. So I want you to extend the arm into a comfortable position, but I'm also not a fan of taking and extending it all the way. I know some shooters will literally lock this arm out. So when I do this, the second I get in this position, I find I can't pull and move the gun and stop it on target as fast. So my hand position is extended pretty much as far as I can get it with a slight bend in the elbow. Okay, and I'm going to grab the whole handguard. Certainly, I know some shooters tend to like to point the thumb. For me, it doesn't really matter as long as your thumb is not in the way of your optic. Okay, Drop, drive, pull, press. I want you to remember that. Write that down. Drop, drive, pull, press. Okay, I'm going to teach you how to drop the elbow, drive the shoulder, pull the stock into your body, and press your cheek into the cheek weld. So when I do my mount, I'm going to mount it as centered as I possibly can. So granted, if I'm shooting with my right eye, it's going to be just to the right side of center line, but it's going to be at a height where I don't have to drop my head a bunch to get it. So I want to bring the rifle or PCC up to my face. I don't want to bring my face down to it. Okay, so center that up. When I actually go to mount, I'm going to drop the elbow. Okay, by dropping the elbow, I automatically solidify my chest. So if you take your elbow and drop it down, you're going to feel the tension from your deltoid to your chest area solidify, which gives me a solid platform to pull the PCC against. Okay, so I'm going to drop the elbow. I'm going to drive the shoulder forward. So I'm driving the shoulder into the gun. I'm pulling the stock into my body. So there's a pull into my body. Okay, give you a sideways view. Pull. Okay, and then I'm pressing the cheek down to the actual stock itself. So I'm, in essence, when I mount the rifle or the PCC, I'm driving, pulling, pressing. Drop the elbow, drive the shoulder, pull the stock into your body, and press your cheek into the cheek weld. So let's talk real quick about speed. The single most important thing beyond moving the gun fast that you can do to shoot fast is to have a consistent cheek weld. And if you have let's define cheek weld. A cheek weld is where you weld the stock area to your cheek in a manner so that the eye you're shooting with is directly in front of the optic, right? The better the cheek weld is, right, the better I can see this dot. If I take the rifle PCC and I mount it, then I have to move my face down and find the dot. That costs me time. So the single most important thing you can do to gain speed is to find out what your cheek weld is. So when you're talking about cheek weld, you can simply take the gun, actually move it off your body, okay? Excuse me, find your dot in your optic, okay, and then bring the gun straight back. So right there is going to be the spot where the stock touches my cheek, right, which aligns my eye up with the optic. So when I'm practicing speed, whether it's a start position or the stock is on belt, I'm driving the gun out there, I'm making contact with the cheek weld, and then I'm pulling the stock back. That's a key point. That's a consideration you need to try, right? So pull that stock straight out there to the cheek weld and then into your body. Don't put it on your body and then bring the head down, right? So bring the gun to your face. And if you hear this, I'm not sure if the microphone is picking this up very well. But when I actually do this, you can hear the gun hit my face. Okay, so when I'm practicing mounting from whatever position, I'm driving it straight out. It's making pretty good contact with my face. Okay. Rich, how we doing? We didn't freeze on the internet, did we? For a second, I looked like I had some.
Just buffered real quick.
Okay, so are we back and looking good?
Back and looking good. Got 106 watching, Mike, and I have a question whenever you're ready.
All right, sir. Go ahead. What's your question?
This comes from our old pal, John. John says, where do you stand on pairing a red dot with a magnifier?
So in terms of PCC setup, once again, let's keep this context specific. You see exactly what I have on the gun, right? So I don't have a magnifier. There's no reason for the pistol caliber carbine division to have a magnifier for me, because we're not going to shoot past 100 yards. So there's no reason to have a magnifier for competitive purposes. Now, a magnifier would be applicable for 3-gun with a 1-power optic in the division you're shooting, or it may certainly be applicable with a rifle with a 1-power optic. But for me, even with my rifles, with the Holosuns, I can shoot to 300 and 400 yards with this dot and get hits all day long. So I don't need a magnifier. I'm in a self-defense situation. If I'm shooting it past 100 yards, right, there's a weird issue. I would have a hard time articulating in court why I'm shooting at someone past 100 yards and not escaping, evading. I'm not saying it's not possible. Maybe you happen to own a ranch on the Texas border and you're out checking your cattle and you get back and you look down to your house and there's some banditos and drug runners and they've got your family wrangled up and you're 122 yards away. Okay, maybe that would be an option for a limited variable power optics, something that you can crank up and say, okay, I could take a shot now, but I think that'd be pretty contrived. So yeah.
John says cross-eye dominance, does it affect your cheek wall at all?
Not at all. Cross-eye dominance has no relevance whatsoever in rifle or shotgun shooting. So if I'm shooting with my right shoulder, I shoot with my right eye. If I'm shooting with my left shoulder, I have to shoot with my left eye. right? There's no option. There's no other way to do it. Meaning I can't get my right eye behind the optic, and I'm left eye dominant. I can't get my left eye behind the optic. So when it's on my right shoulder, I'm using my right eye. When it's on my left shoulder, I'm using my left eye. How do you practice that if you're cross dominant or your eyes are neutrally dominant? Well, you practice mounting the rifle, finding the optic. Mounting the rifle, find the optic. And eventually your brain says, hey, when there's something mounted and touching here, use the right eye and the information from the right eye, or vice versa. You could also close an eye. Maybe you're a strongly left eye dominant shooter and you're shooting PCC or 3-gun. Well, when you pick up the shotgun or the rifle, just close the left eye for a second or squint it, and then that vision will take over. Okay. In terms of the drop, drag, pull, press, and then we'll do some more Q&A. It's super important that you get the cheek weld in that position, right? We start in most matches in one or two positions. We're going to either start with the PCC or rifle mounted, and pointed at like a cone or a start position. So when I'm working my my mount drill, I will typically do a 3-position mount. I'll work 3 different positions. Number 1, where the stock is positioned, and I'm driving it up. Okay. Number 2, where the stock is near my belt. And I've seen a lot of folks do different things here. I see some guys actually take the stock and they mount like this, right? Okay. I tend to like to take the muzzle itself, and I will have the muzzle lined up with the first target. So if you can see, my muzzle is lined up with the camera. So if the camera is the first target, I'm going to be having the stock at my belt level and my muzzle right there at the camera. Then I'm going to drive the muzzle directly toward the target. Okay, one more time. I'm literally going to snap it out, drive, and you can actually hear the bolt moving when I do that very aggressively. Because, of course, one way to gain speed is to move faster, right? So drive the gun up there. So anyways, this one, drive it up here, stock on belt, drive it up there. The third one I practice is stock over shoulder, right? If you look at the aggressiveness, I'm doing this. Drive that, find my cheek weld. Drive, there's my cheek weld. Okay, I'm very, very aggressive in that motion. Well, you're probably thinking, well, why do I do this? Because if I move, if I shoot a couple targets, boom, boom, and have to run, I'm going to be running like this, right? When I get to the next position, boom, I'll drive that into a place, okay? Man, I'm talking really fast this morning. Sorry, folks. I guess I'm just so excited about this. Mr. Rich Brown, what do we have as far as questions? Anything we have?
I have one more question for you, Mike, from Chris. Chris says, what's your opinion on forward assist uppers versus non-forward assist uppers?
Yeah, good question. Chris, all of my Wilson Combat rifles, except for a couple, and PCCs use, what's this called? It's our modular upper. I don't want to use the wrong term. Anyways, these uppers, I'm drawing a blank at the term for these uppers. None of them have forward assists. I've never needed one. Don't think it's necessary. If you have a situation where there's not a round in the chamber, instead of reaching up and doing the forward assist, I would tap, rack, and feed another round in there, in both defensive and competitive type purposes if necessary. I'm not poo-pooing on guns that have a forward assist, right? They make sense in a lot of cases for an old style combat M16, but I don't have forward assists on any of my PCCs or my rifles, and I've not found that to be a problem. Okay. Any questions beyond that?
No. Thanks to the 112 people joining us.
113 people right now, folks. If every one of you click share, we're going to hit 150. That's all you got to do. Every one of you click the share. Of course, if you don't click the share, then we won't hit 150. Okay.
Chris says, does anyone make an upper for left-handed shooters that you're aware of?
There is a company that makes an upper for a left-handed shooter with all the controls on the opposite side. Wilson Combat doesn't. I don't know the company that does, but I've seen one at the SHOT Show a couple of years ago. Okay, but there are some uppers that are left-handed only. Okay,
122, Mike.
We're there. We're going to hit 150 here in just a moment. I could see it. I could feel it. So one more time, I want to remind you to remember: drop, drive, pull, press. So whenever you're practicing your mount, 3-position mount. Okay. Oh, by the way, I forgot a really important part. I should have told you this. With a rifle or a PCC, my strong hand thumb is always, always, always riding the safety. So when I actually do my mount, you can hear a click. So I just wipe that safety back off and back on. So I always ride the safety. So whenever I'm working on my, stock on belt or my stock over shoulder position, I'm always wiping the safety on and back off. Once again, you can see the right thumb right now. It's on top of that safety. So when I drive the gun out there, it's really important. And that's another key tip for you that you might have missed. When I do this, I drive the stock off of my body just slightly into the cheek weld and then back into position. I don't mount the rifle or PCC and then bring my head down. So I'm literally hitting my face. Boom, you can hear that, right? Boom, drop, drive, pull, press, drop, drive, pull, press, okay? Switching shoulders. If I have to switch shoulders from one shoulder to the other shoulder, so I'm going to show you this from this side. And I want you to practice it in this manner. I want you to start with your finger on the trigger, because oftentimes when we switch shoulders, we do it in a manner where we just finished shooting a target. Now we got to switch the other shoulder and shoot something else on the left-hand side. So if you have a reason to switch shoulders, start with your finger on the trigger. So you have to practice the action of taking the finger off of the trigger. So when I take the finger off the trigger, I want to give the trigger finger something to do. So I'm going to reach back, I'm going to grab the mag well, and I'm going to take the finger off the trigger, okay? Two things happen at the same time. Watch this. Boom, okay? And once I do that, then I'm going to switch to the opposite shoulder. And then the finger can go back in and fire my shots, okay? Finger, finger, finger switch, finger switch, finger. I'm grabbing right here, switching. Boom. That's how I switch shoulders. Okay. Once again, finger position is critically important. Hey, there's Jeff Heath this morning. Good morning, Jeff.
Yeah, he's got some questions for you, Mike. If you're
yeah,
ready.
Let's throw them out there so I'll see what I missed.
Yeah, Jeff says, how are your left elbow and shoulder when mounted? Are they locked, or does it depend on the length?
Okay, so Jeff, my left elbow is always slightly bent. I found this position stronger for me to move or drive, because when I'm acquiring or transitioning the next target, I'm either pulling or pushing the rifle with my body and my arm. This is a little stronger than this. I never extend the arm all the way. I find this is not as strong as this is. So it's a slight bend in my elbow, but it's extended as far as I can with a slight bend in my elbow. Okay, that's the lead elbow at least. Okay.
And I guess a follow-up question from Jeff is, how is your weak side when mounted? Elbow lock, shoulder push forward, pulling into the body, or just holding up?
We talked about my elbow, my shoulder, my entire structure, my shoulder is rigid. So my shoulders are generally square to the target, right? Just like this, I'm square to the target, because here's the deal. When I have folks square up, it offers a recoil control cycle with the rifle or carbine that is better than when you're blading or moving the stock farther out of your shoulder and blading it off. And there's some, Jeff, as you know, there's some defensive purposes where I may cheat the stock out there if I'm trying to maximize my use of cover. But the more this stock is out here on my shoulder, it's simple leverage. The more leverage the rifle has against me to turn me, right? So I'm really very centered up. So when I'm shooting the PCC or rifle, my shoulders are pretty square, right? With the exception where maybe I'm rolling around a piece of cover or whatever else.
William says almost all the PCCs available have a mag release for right-handers and no option for ambidextrous. Any suggestions for efficiency for lefty mag changes?
Man, that's a good one. I actually do a little bit of practice with lefty magazine changes. So you could, of course, add, I think they make an assist device. I know they do with the bolt, of course, with the mag release, where it runs over and you can hit it on the opposite side. Not positive, but for the lefty mag changes, I hate to say it, I'm just, for me, I'm just reaching back, releasing and ripping, grabbing a magazine, and then using the charging handle to run it. It's never going to be as fast as a righty mag change with a right-handed setup rifle. That's just the bottom line. You could be really, really fast, but it's never going to be as fast. The good news is, more often than not, that reload doesn't matter much because we're not doing a standing load. You're moving to the next position, and or with the PCC, you're almost never loading. So,
I believe it's Chris here. Is a pretty good question. Chris says, how important is your hip orientation in limiting overswing and transitions?
So, Chris, my hips are almost always square to the target. So, like right now, you can't see it, but there's a target right there, and there's a target right there. So if I'm shooting both of those targets, right, I'm driving the gun up there, and now to shoot the other target, I'm going to be pushing off my left foot, and I'm driving the gun with my left hand. So I'm going to be pushing and driving the gun there, and when I stop the gun, I'm stopping the gun on target. So I'm pushing and stopping with my right hand. I'm pushing and stopping the gun with my left hand. So my hips, though, which you can't see, my hips will roll on camera. They stay pretty square to my whole body. But I'm using my whole body to drive the gun into position. I'm not just turning on my in my waist. I'm using my entire lower body and upper body to drive the gun. So if I'm shooting there, my hips are still pretty square there. My chest is still pretty square there. Boom. Chest is pretty square in that direction. I'm pivoting on my feet and my legs and my hips. So I'm doing all of the above.
Our old buddy John says, Mike, this question is for you. In pistols, we talk about grip strength a lot. Does grip strength matter much in terms of the rifle shooting?
Good question, John. I think that it matters much less, but understand when I'm shooting with my rifle or PCC, I have rigidity in my hands, my arms, my shoulders. You know, it's a rigid, strong position. Like I'm gripping the front of the handguard hard. I think grip strength is important no matter what. It's less important, John, than with the handgun, obviously, because the only thing controlling the handgun is your two hands, right? The only thing controlling. This has multiple points of contact. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm using my entire body, but grip strength is still very important.
Mike Allen says, how does switching shoulders affect your eye dominance, particularly as me being a left eye dominant?
Eye dominance means nothing when you're switching shoulders, Alan. If you're shooting on your right side, as far as I know, there's no way to use your left eye, right? If you're on your left eye side, there's no way to use your right eye. So use the eye on the side you're shooting with. And you may say, well, how do I, if I'm left eye dominant? You probably know that, Alan. So how do I shoot with the right hand? I use my right eye. My brain says, hey, you're aiming a rifle or a PCC. The right eye's in front of the optic. I can see the dot. Use the right eye. Go to the left shoulder. My brain says, hey, you're shooting a rifle. You're touching your left side of your cheek. Use your left eye.
But did they make you wear an eye patch or anything like that in boot camp, Mike, to train that eye?
No, I don't think I ever wore an eye because I shot rifles as a kid the entire time with my right eye. Shot rifles in childhood, my entire childhood. I probably didn't know I was left eye dominant. I can't even tell you for a fact what eye I was aiming handguns with back then. I would assume it was my left eye, but I don't know. I don't know. Is it, Mo, in terms of this, for Alan and everybody else, if you're left eye dominant and you have a hard time, could you shut an eye? Sure. Why not? Just shut an eye, close an eye, squint an eye, do whatever you have to. But don't forget, though, that you're looking at the target through these optics. If you're looking at a true one power, optic, you're looking at the target still. I'm not trying to focus on the dot. I'm looking at the target. So my right eye, I can keep both eyes open pretty easily. And I mean, probably why I started shooting a very, very bright, robust, open one power optics, like, Holosun, EOTech, stuff like that, because I can see the reticle so bright, and it, turn my brain on to seeing the reticle. I guess that's how I learned that. Okay.
Casey says, when rolling around a barrier to gain a good sight, does the stock stay tight to your shoulder?
Yes, the stock is always tight. If I have to come around a barricade, and by the way, a lot of folks will have a second optic on their gun. So when the right-handed shooter is rolling to the left, right, they'll come over here, they'll camp the gun, they'll use the other optic. I don't do that. If I have to lean hard left, and if you can imagine the corner of the wall was right here, I take my right shoulder and I rotate it straight up in the air. So now I can shoot this target, this target, this target, this target as I'm leaning around. It's kind of an athletic position. You're going to have to use your core strength, but you can get a long ways around. And if I can't get it by doing this, then I'm switching to the other shoulder. Okay, so that's the one case that I'll switch to the other shoulder. which when I was, competing at PCC and trying out PCC, I've always switched shoulders a lot with both my rifles and PCCs. So I can demo for lefties and shoot left-handed, and I can race shooters with my left hand if I want to make it a little more challenging for them. And if I'm coming around a position on the left-hand side. Okay.
Mike, last question here that we have is from Billy. Billy says, how do you teach lefties manipulation of a right-handed safety?
Get an ambi safety.
There you go.
Ambi safety. Boom, boom. Like we talked about earlier in the live show. Got to have an ambi safety. There's no reason not to. They're so common. They're so easy to get. Put an ambi safety on the gun. You can run it with your right hand. You can run it with your left hand. So get an ambi safety. I will answer the question. If you don't have an ambi safety, trigger finger, right? So I'll show you the opposite side. So I may use my trigger finger, manipulate. I prefer this much over some folks do this. They reach the thumb over like this. I'm not saying this is wrong, right? I don't like the fact that I've lost the grip. So I would rather wipe it off with the trigger finger. Just make sure when you're doing that, you're wiping it back on. You don't pull the trigger on accident. Okay.
Thanks, Mike. Yako from South Africa, our good pal, says, have you ever tried just moving the butt across without switching hands?
Yeah. By doing this, yes. But for me, it's almost impossible for me to get my head because of my cheek and my head size over there. So the time I would go, I can't shoot very well. I might as well just do that, right? So no, I don't use that technique. It doesn't work for me. I hate that position. I just can't get the gun in a good position. It's very, very slow. For me, it works for some people. Maybe skinny neck, skinny face folks.
You do have a big face. I've been wanting to tell you that.
I have a big, pretty face, actually.
Mike, that's all the questions we have so far, sir.
All right. Hey, folks, great questions. I don't know if we had 150 this morning, but that's okay. I think it was hopefully an entertaining show. If you like this, if you like the PCC, let me know. Maybe we'll cover some more material next week on the PCC if I get a bunch of comments on it. But I will in the next 2 or 3 shows. We're going to float right into defensive rifle. So I'm going to bring my defensive rifle on the show. I'm going to show you my light mounting solutions. I'm going to show you my suppressors. I'm going to show you all of these different things that I use for a defensive-oriented rifle as well as slings. And we'll talk maybe a little bit more about defensive context. We may even talk about some of the close quarter stuff, like shooting from a retracted position, shooting from a stock over shoulder position, how I practice those things and how I do those and why I do those as well. Okay. In summary, hey, thank you so much for joining. Had a bunch of folks on today that I haven't had for a long, long time. I know Jeff is on as well. Jocko, nice to see you again. Any more questions?
Yeah, I think Tony's wanting you to cover maybe on one of your shows, PCC or rifle reloads.
Yes. What I would like to do is probably next week, if we stay with the PCC, I'm going to bring a magazine and we'll talk about loads. I may even talk about how to pick the thing up off a table and do a load because I've had that question. So Tony, we'll talk about that in next week. And when we hit the defensive rifle cycle, we'll talk about the transition process. If you're talking about reloads with the rifle, defensive contacts, then we need to be talking about transition as well, and I'll cover that as well. Okay.
Final question, Mike, if you have time for it. Ken over at Firearms Training says, what do you think about the Mantis training tool? Have you used it?
How often have you heard that question, Rich?
I know.
First of all, I have not used the Mantis a bunch. I do have a Mantis system here. I've mounted on a handgun a couple times. I've never mounted a Mantis on a rifle or a PCC, so I don't have any feedback on that. And I have not used the Mantis enough to give you a lot of great feedback. I know I should. I keep telling Rich I'm going to send in more of the Mantises so he can test them. I've heard they're great products. They give great feedback in terms of some of the information. But right now, I don't use it enough to give you some high quality feedback. So
Matt is on. Matt says, hello, Mike and Rich. I just want to say hello and thanks for doing this and letting everyone know that does not know. You guys put on the best instructor development course in the biz. Thanks,
wow.
Matt.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That's awesome. All right. Hey, let me close it out for you real quick, folks. Of course, we talked about Techwell, the Techwell system. They were one of our show sponsors, as well as the American Competitive Shooter Society and American Warrior Society. So check out them. These are my Wilson Combat AR-9Gs. I showed those off. Write this down, SEEK15, SEEK15, 50% discount on Techwell products. So if you need a 1911 Techwell system, which is the one I use, by the way, I'll show that off in the future, I have in the past, or a magwell like this or a tack latch like this, please use that discount code and order your Techwell Magwell, they make one for most PCCs out there, and they have a bunch of new products as well. Today we talked about drop, drive, pull, press. I've talked about the importance of cheek weld. Get in the rifle or the carbine up to your cheek weld, and the cheek weld is the secret to speed. The faster you get the stock into that position, the faster you're going to be, and the faster you move the gun, the faster you're going to be. So when I'm doing this particular technique, I'm driving the gun out there aggressively, and then I'm going to drop, drive, pull, press. Drop the elbow, drive the shoulder forward, pull the stock into my body, and press my face into the cheek weld. And you'd be surprised at how much you settle the dot on a rifle or a carbine system by pressing your face into the stock. I learned that several years ago, and I've been using it ever since. Also, I taught you about switching the shoulders. Remember, we start with the trigger finger on the trigger, so we get to practice the action of taking the finger off the trigger. Once again, trigger finger is on the trigger, so when I reach back and I switch the shoulders out, I'm automatically grabbing the magwell, taking the finger off the trigger. Magwell, finger. Magwell, finger. Switch shoulders, and then fire your next shot. Last but not least, strong hand thumb. Always, always rides the safety. So when I'm mounting the rifle or carbine, I'm wiping the safety off. Once again, strong hand thumb rides that safety. Mount in your position. 3-position mount over the shoulder. We talked about it all. Mr. Rich Brown, closing questions before we get off here.
I just have a closing comment, man. When I've worked on this, and I know I've seen you too, a bruised cheek is incredibly common, and it speaks to something that I hear a lot, and that is, well, Mike, this doesn't feel comfortable, or this holster isn't comfortable, or carrying the appendix isn't comfortable, or slamming the rifle into my cheek isn't comfortable. Can you talk to that?
Yes. I don't care about comfortable. I
There
care
we
about
go.
performance. So if you were literally watching me practice, you would see me, on live fire. I may have a couple targets set up. I would be literally driving the gun into my face and my body like this, right? Then I would work over the shoulder, right? Then I would work low right. Then I might work a step, but every time, boom. Literally, Rich is not exaggerating. I will have a small bruise on my shoulder if I've shot 400 or 500 rounds with the rifle or PCC. This is not a relaxed, let me just float it up there. This is a system where I'm, boom, as fast as I can. Boom. You can actually hear the bolt move, right? Boom. Okay? Drop, drive, pull, press. Aggressive. Move fast. Don't believe slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Don't believe
What?
that. Fast is fast. Move fast, but do it right. These are all index points, like indexing the draw, indexing the hand position, stuff like that.
Work on technique before speed, right, Mike? And then ratchet the speed
Work
up.
on technique. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with slowing the process down so you could do it consciously and do it as perfect as possible. I've never said to do anything wrong, but eventually to be faster, you got to try to go faster, and you got to use good technique behind that. So, Mr. Rich Brown, that's all I have. I've got to close it off. Looks like we have a lot of people on today. Thank you so much for all of you IDPA shooters that shoot PCC and watching. I do believe next Wednesday we might do PCC again. I might actually go live from Live Fire. Rich got a tour of the Live Fire studio last week. It's pretty exciting. If you don't know what Live Fire is, go to the App Store or go to your Google Play area and search Live Fire, and you'll be pretty impressed. It's pretty darn neat. Last but not least, don't forget Seek15 is a discount code for the Techwell system, Magwell grips, whatever you need from them. Please write that down and use that for 15% off. They don't ever give discounts. And if you're interested in more PCC stuff, check out the PCC Mastery Program. Okay, Friday morning, Mr. Rich Brown, tell me about Friday morning before we end this. Do you have a live show on Friday morning?
We have a live show this coming Friday morning. We're going to be talking about self-defense weapons. We're going to be talking about everything and anything. Please join us in. If you're doing the 5-day fight challenge with Mike and I at 10:30 Eastern time, I'm going to be going live, and we're going to cover everything that's on the 5-day fight challenge. So just a shout out to that as well.
Cool. And that's 9:30 Central Time, 10:30 Eastern Time. That's in about an hour. So jump on that watch party if you get a chance. If you're doing that How to Win a Fight Challenge, 5-day challenge, if you are signed up for that and doing that, thank you for doing that. I hope I'm teaching you a few things in the videos we're sending. Anyways, Mr. Rich, that's all I have, brother. Let's go ahead and end this broadcast and be done with it, sir. Thank you, Chris, for sharing.